afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us with the Transit and Transportation Committee meeting. We have one item today to discuss, and that item is around downtown parking for downtown business owners at this current time during COVID-19. I am Councilman Corey Branch, Mayor Pro Tem, and today's we held this from our last meeting to receive information from our staff around our budget, our funding, where we stand currently in this year's fiscal budget. Upon receiving that, I definitely have my thoughts as far as our general fund and not really wanting to tax it and things of that nature. But before we really get started and I go to other council members and staff, I do want to ask here for the record, do we have anyone who signed up to speak today? I believe not. So I just want to, okay. So I just want to make sure I did acknowledge that opportunity was there. But I'm going to open it up from council members because I think staff, the only thing you have is what came from last meeting. There's nothing new.
Yeah, so Chair, we do have Matt Courier is here as well as other members from the Transportation, Department of Transportation. They do have the presentation from your last meeting available. Should there be any questions to need to refer to that. Also, at your last meeting, you did ask for some feedback from the Downtown Raleigh Alliance. So we do have representation from the DRA to provide feedback should the committee wish to hear from the DRA.
Okay. And also I see there is a survey that's been added that DRA conducted about parking downtown.
Yes.
Council members have had a chance to review.
Yeah, and to clarify that survey, that was a survey that was done separate from this particular question. So I think that was a data point that was provided by the DRA just as a point of reference in terms of parking utilization, but that wasn't a survey, to my understanding, that was done uniquely for the purpose of outreach on this particular item. But okay. I would certainly defer to the DRA to further describe the source of that survey data.
Okay. Is anyone there? Is Bill King there that he can give some background on that? Councilor Stewart, because I know you're a representative as well for the council there.
Thank you. I wonder if we couldn't get a little bit information from staff about the memo that was included in the backup regarding, we had asked staff to look into options 1 and 3 more, but it sounds like option 2 might provide some, a path forward. And I'm curious if we could hear more about that.
Okay.
So let me ask Matt Courier to come to the podium, and I don't know, others are probably seeing some latency issues too on their screens. So Matt, if you can come to the digital podium and bring up the slide with the options, and he can certainly talk through the feedback and the memo that came from the DRA.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem and Council Committee members. Matthew Courier, Parking Manager. Also have Bill King from the DRA here as well to answer some questions. To dive into, a little bit deeper in this presentation. If you'll remember, you had asked us to take a look at option 1 and option 3. We met and spoke with DRA and got some feedback from them on those options as well as broader ones. And kind of what would most benefit, downtown small businesses. In our conversations with them, I think they had some broad concerns about option 1 and its impacts to other customer access and other businesses. What they did suggest was potentially broadening of option 2 to not be dedicated to just the city center deck, but rather to kind of as many of our downtown assets as possible. If I pull us back just a little bit here, get to the right one. This is what we had originally presented for option 2, with just being the city center deck. You'll see we have parking decks kind of to the west, majority of them to the east. the businesses that could be a part of this are spread all throughout downtown. And DRA thought if it was possible, if we could spread this program outside of just the Red Hat City Center parking deck, it would be more beneficial to more of the small businesses.
Councilor Stewart, did that answer your questions or?
I mean, I like this approach. I think it provides more access. I'm curious if there's more information on actual costs. Last time we received a pretty high dollar amount associated with that, and there was some sticker shock, and we wanted to get some information on the budget, which we got at our last full council meeting. And so I am really interested in this path and want to get a better understanding of how much would we actually be losing versus if we were operating in a non-COVID world, would we be losing?
So I'll maybe jump in on behalf of Matthew. I think it's a hard question for us to answer. We don't know who would participate in the program. So certainly individuals that are currently paying for monthly passes or paying for daily rates would be eligible. And so that would be actual foregone revenue. Others that maybe aren't participating on those, but then take a pass, that would be opportunity costs. So those are spaces that then we couldn't get revenue on. I think likely the way to set this program up, if you were going to recommend it to the rest of the council, would be similar to the way that we did the free passes for council meetings, that we actually created a mechanism to track actual utilization, and the general fund compensated based on those actual numbers. So I think to some degree we would, the estimates included in the presentation were kind of estimates from a planning purpose. But I think we would set this up if we were to move forward, that the general fund would be responsible for actual costs incurred by the program. I do think part of the premise here is the lost revenue to the potential lost revenue to the parking fund. The other piece is just a rate equity consideration. So that if the parking fund was absorbing those losses, that's essentially other parkers that are subsidizing the rates for other people getting services in the deck versus the general fund compensating those services for those individuals.
What about a reduce? Because I think this is the intent of saying no charge. What about a reduced rate? Or if we extended an existing program, I know we currently have the 5 after 5, but I think it starts at 3 o'clock. If we were to move that up to start sooner in the day, how would
I'll
that
defer
work?
to Matt Courier. The 5 after 5 program was previously suspended.
Right.
And so we do some other monthly rates for individuals in the service industry that's a monthly pass. I think again, the premise here, you could certainly, rather than do a free program, do a discounted program. Again, the question would be whether or not that you would expect the parking fund to absorb that loss. I think again, our recommendation would be that the general fund compensate the difference between the monthly parking rate and whatever that revenue amount would be.
Councilor Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor Turpin. Councilor Branch. Could we take the presentation down so we can see one another and get a better sense of where folks are at? Thank you. Okay. I'm having a hard time getting my head around what the actual cost to the general fund would be. I think there's a lot of benefit in moving forward with a program that would help our downtown business, downtown retail and restaurant industry employees in this moment. They are more impacted by COVID versus our kind of monthly parkers who are likely working at home while their companies and their employment continues pretty unchecked from a financial standpoint. So I think there's a lot of value in moving forward this program for that specific sector. And with there being so many vacancies in the deck, I'm just still having a really hard time getting my head around what the cost would be to the general fund. But I know Councilmember Melton has some questions, so I will pause.
Councilor Milton.
Yeah, Councilmember Stewart touched on, I think, my question. I thought maybe I was a little confused, but I know at our last council meeting when we received an update on the budget, there was a comment, I believe, about how our parking revenue is really down. I think the comment was that many of our decks are sitting near empty. So I'm just confused. It seems like we're double counting our losses in this analysis because that's a sunk cost already. It seems that the business has not returned. And so rather than empty parking spots or empty decks sitting there, I'd like to be able to offer this up as an additional resource to our business owners. And so I'm kind of not understanding the issue with the cost, because it seems like that cost is going to happen whether it sits there vacant or whether we offer it up to someone who owns a small business downtown.
Yeah, let me reframe, and we can certainly follow up. So there is not an additional cost. There is the potential for additional lost revenue. So individuals are still paying for daily or hourly or monthly passes in the deck. So if I forgo a monthly pass that I'm paying for a free pass, that is additional lost revenue to the parking fund. So I think the previous feedback that you got at your budget work session is that the most stable of the income streams to the parking fund is the monthly parking rate. So we've not seen nearly the erosion of parking revenues in that particular class of revenues. It is hard for us to estimate how many individuals that might participate in this program for either a free or a reduced pass is in fact purchasing one of those monthly passes. And at the point we commit that pass to a free rate, we do lose the opportunity, should we see some growth in monthly passes, to be able to sell those. So it's a revenue generation opportunity that's lost, that has the potential to compound losses that are already happening in the parking fund. The other question is just as a policy question. In other cases, when there's a policy goal that the council has had that's not related or that's meant to bolster economic development or other kinds of activities or community engagement activities, similar, when we made passes free to attend community meetings, the general fund took on the expense of compensating for that, then expecting essentially what you're asked, if the parking fund absorbs the loss of revenue, it really, it is, we are at the point that to some degree we are burning through fund balance in the parking fund, and the general fund may need to subsidize the parking fund at some point regardless. But outside of that, it really is other parkers that are paying their monthly, daily, or hourly rates that are subsidizing the parking for those individuals. So from a policy perspective, other recent activities, the general fund has compensated the parking fund for those policy benefits. Does that make sense?
Councilor Milton.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. I think that where I am at is I would like for this to be one of our sort of temporary, almost emergency programs that we're standing up in response to COVID to support our downtown businesses. So I would hope that my goal would for this to be in place for a period of time that's necessary during this sort of emergency stage of the pandemic, which we all hope we'd be out of by now, but here we are. And so I'm not really concerned with it being inconsistent on some regular policies, because like nothing we're really doing right now sort of falls under regular policies because of this global pandemic issue. I hear the issue about some individuals who may be currently paying their monthly rate might switch over to this program. And I think that that's a risk I'm willing to take, because in a certain way, it almost feels like we're asking for so much of our downtown business owners. On top of that, we're also asking them to be the ones bearing the brunt of keeping the monthly permit program running. So if we can offer this up to them as an additional service for a finite period of time, and even if it's shorter than we think the pandemic's going to last, why don't we do it and then reassess and see how much of a hit we've taken? Is it sustainable, and how much use are we getting out of it? But I'm inclined to try this option approach for at least a short period of time.
Okay, so here I sat here and I went back to when we met back in October. And it's one of the questions I have to ask is, what is the problem we're trying to fix? The original question was around a business owner wanting to park in front of their business. And we've kind of looked at this holistically as far as not just as business owners, but their staff, especially for our hospitality staff that is still working downtown. I'm one of those people that also believe people should have skin in the game. So for me, just saying free, knowing that someone's going to have to cover this cost, period. It's either come from the general fund, which all taxpayers' monies will be pulled. That money is used to pull to cover the cost. Or we have a reduced rate and we still pull from the general fund to possibly cover some costs, but at a lower amount. For me, I think I've gotten to that point of some type of reduced rate. And I know we have an existing program in place that does offer some reduced rate. And it kind of goes to Councilor Milton's thing, something on a temporary basis of possibly expanding that program to help in this area. Is that possible? Asking Matthew, like how, and when I say, is that possible, not can we do it, but I'm trying to understand the management of that part of it.
Yeah, so there's two different kind of potential programs. So there is the nighttime downtown evening employee program that we have, which is a $20 a month program, which was kind of put in place to, from 3 p.m. to I think 6 a.m. the next morning. And it's really put in place to get those evening workers that are typically Friday night, Saturday night, that would have been paying the $5 after 5 rate multiple times a week, some sort of a discounted guaranteed access. It's really a product that we put out there to get them off of the street, which is free during that period, and into a parking deck to again try and get customers access to the street. I think what I'm hearing is a different program that affects the daytime and potentially the nighttime. And what that to me looks more similar to is our normal monthly account program, where we don't know who potentially would benefit from this. Is it a daytime employee? Is it an evening employee? We could make this program broad and say you have the same 24/7 access as a regular monthly account holder at potentially some discounted rate. Is I think what feels like we could slot this under different than just the evening program, which was there to just mitigate that $5 after 5 cost, which is currently not in place.
Okay, and that monthly account program, I'm sure that depends on the number of spaces a company is asking for to be within that program, or is that just Corey comes in, I want a space, and I just pay that rate? What is that, a set rate, or does it vary depending on the company getting multiple spaces for their employees?
Just a quick clarification: is that just are you asking about our just normal monthly account program?
Correct.
Yep. So there's the only barrier for that or any capping would be the number of available spaces we have in the system. So if the company comes in and wants 5 or wants 500, if that amount of space exists, they could access that amount of space. And that would be at the going normal market rate of $125 a month.
Okay, you said 175 a month. Okay.
125.
125. Okay.
And just for reference, and I may have said it, the evening program is a $20 a month program.
So counselors, we know, based on me listening and hearing the conversation, we're trying to figure out what we can do to help those employees downtown during the COVID period for a certain period of time. We have 2 current programs. We have a monthly accounts program, which is $125 a month. And then we have the 3 to 6 a.m. program, which is $20 a month. And I'm hearing from the 2 of you, I guess I'm sensing trying to meet somewhere in the middle. And I'm now going to ask the hard question. What is that middle? Okay.
Thanks. Councilmember Branch, I think you nailed it in terms of where we're at. I wonder how specific we need to get in our solution finding here, as opposed to providing staff with more direction, in really just kind of focusing in on this. I can't remember if it's option 2 or plan B, but the one with the parking decks, and figuring out the best way to get something on the ground the quickest that is also trackable, so that we can see if we do have any monthly folks who are switching over to this discounted or free, whatever we decide to go with, option for those workers. I don't know if we need to get to that solution or just provide more direction for staff to get to that solution. And that may be nuanced, but.
Okay, Councilor Melton.
No, actually, I'm fine. I agree with this. I thought I had something to add, but I don't. So thank you. I'm also getting like blinded here by this light. So.
Yeah, we can actually see it. So
can I clarify really quickly? I think I heard the request to be for, in addition to identifying the administrative work necessary to stand up a project, that one of the data metrics that you want us to try to track is those that might eliminate a monthly account. How many of them have participated in a free or reduced? We could likely do that for monthly accounts. I don't think there's any way for us to do that for daily or other uses. Am I understanding the request?
Yeah, Councilor Stewart.
Thanks. Yes, and that would be moving forward, not kind of in the past, but moving forward if we were to do this new program, to just make sure we can track that. I'm trying to think more long-term here, and to Councilmember Melton's point, the backside of this, because it is a temporary program. And so I also have some interest in, I know that our $20 a month program is underutilized right now. And so could this be a mechanism to then get those same workers into the $20 a month program on the backside of this? So just kind of capturing metrics, and eventually we'll get on the backside of this thing.
I'm thinking. I'm thinking about our $20 a month program. Well, I guess what I got for the time frame that we're really trying to focus on, and this is really for my other counselors, that program is from 3 to 6, 3 p.m. to 6 a.m., the $20 a month evening program. Which target of employees are we trying to focus on? Are we saying the lunch crowd? Or are we saying going with earlier than that? Either one, if you have thoughts. Are you saying, and the reason why I'm asking because we already have a program in place. Do we, and I'm not trying to get in the weeds, but it's the engineer in me that's coming out. Do you take the $20 a month program, take that program and say, hey, if you come in at noon, you can do, it's $50 a month, but it's the same program. We're just starting you earlier in the day. You know, and that is the kind of temporary program. Because I'm trying to find something, a sense of ease, because we said something that's quick to the market. Because I already know, based when we take this to the full body council, they may ask these questions. Okay, what is it going to cost us, and how are we covering it? If we don't have a number here to say what it's going to cost, it's probably going to sit there. Councilor Stewart.
So I think it has to be a new program, or at least called a new program and talked about differently. Otherwise, I think you're going to have workers who come back wanting to jump on this $20 or $50 a month program if you're just extending those hours. I think it has to be very specifically targeted for retail and restaurant employees during COVID for a temporary thing. And then we can transition them into existing programs when we get there. But I don't think expanding the $20 a month program hours-wise does the marketing we need to make sure that we're targeting this specific group. Otherwise, I think we do get into a lot of nuance about who's in, who's not. This is fair, this isn't fair.
Councilor Milton.
Yeah, I hear your point about questions we're going to receive at the table with the full council. It's odd though, because, you know, as Ms. Hayward was saying, we don't really know what sort of impact this is going to have until we try it. And knowing that we're trying to do it just on an emergent temporary basis, I'm almost wondering now if it would be easier to get off the ground and cleaner if we do make it a no-cost program for a very short period of time, just to see what the impact is, before we try to get into shifting hours of time and reducing rates that we already have. If we just say for this program for the next, as soon as it's up and running, I don't know, 60, 90 days, something, and then we reassess. And I don't know if it can be built into the way it's written that way, that it has an endpoint. We may have more data there. This may be something that sends a very strong message to our business community, but on the back end, not that many folks who have existing monthly passes end up using it. And so the impact for us is small, but the impact in offering up assistance is large. So I don't know. That's just me thinking out loud.
No, that's fair. So what I'm hearing is retail and restaurants is the target, and time frame of what's the time period? When will we want staff to start doing this, running this program?
I guess as soon as they can, and then maybe we put, like, once it's up and running, like a 60-day window on it and just reassess. Or do we think that that's not enough time for it to be publicized, and folks, we may get not accurate information because maybe not a lot of people know about it. I think it should be a short period of time, maybe like Q1 2021. I don't know, some block of time that we can, you know, we're thinking outside the box, like we've done a lot this year. So like that we can see what impact it's had on the budget, and also what impact and need there exists. And if it's not being used, then maybe, you know, we don't continue it.
So 3 months. Go ahead, Councilor Stewart.
And I'm maybe jumping in ahead of Ms. Hayward, who might be sharing a brain with me on this. At this point, I think we're back to running this almost like the free parking for attendees of public meetings, and getting it on the ground quickly that way. And Ms. Hayward, I'm sorry if that's not where you were going, to assume that you were.
Yeah, so thank you. I do think there is work that will need to be. I'm not muted.
No, there's some
Sound like a
weird feed. You sound like a robot. Weird feedback.
Can you hear me now?
Mute yourself, and then unmute yourself.
Sound that better? Still worse?
Is there a phone or anything electronic near your computer?
No, I'm gonna chat something. If you can hear that, I'll try not to try to dial in audio from my
Okay.
my computer. I'm sure it's a computer audio issue. I hate talking if I sound like a robot.
So while she does that, this is what I'm hearing. Free for 3 months to give time to track it, kind of like we do evening programs, our meetings. And I guess and then we ask staff, I guess it's free if they sign up. So restaurants will have to go to staff and sign up to get some type of, they'll work out what that mechanism is of getting the pass, the materials, so that they can give the parking lady. Then that comes back to them, and we can figure out based on that ticket how many free passes, how many were used by retail and restaurant employees, and then go from there, determining what the next steps are. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, so am I less robotic now?
Yes, you're good now, so go ahead.
So I do think there is some administrative work that will have to happen in terms of, because the gates, largely this would be a dispersed system versus when at RMB, it's largely one deck. And so we could handle things one-off with vouchers and those kinds of things. Because this is going to be distributed through the system, we are going to have to handle programming of key cards and distribution of key cards. We can certainly bring Matt back to talk about what that time frame might be, but there will be some administrative stand-up. Also, coordination with McLaurin, who manages that system on our behalf in terms of making sure they know who is eligible for those passes. And in terms of duration, that the materials did provide a 4-month estimate of, again, I do want to be clear that I think as staff is asked, I understand the differentiation that members of the committee are making in terms of actual lost revenue, trying to actually chase the accurate number of actual lost revenue versus revenue potential that's committed to the program. We can certainly reiterate that, but I think the easiest estimates for us to provide to the council are those revenue opportunity loss estimates that were provided in the presentation. So it would be helpful to have some sense of the program duration so that staff can update the estimates of what the revenue opportunity associated with the program is. And then we can certainly, again, over time, track actual participation in the program, and those numbers are likely to be different. I think Matt is at the virtual podium, and if the committee is interested in hearing a different, maybe an estimate from him of what the administrative preparation in terms of sign up and distribution of cards are, I know they have at a high level begun to think about that.
Actually, yeah, Matt, you've kind of heard what we've been discussing. Can you provide us your thoughts and expertise here?
Sure. So probably a couple pieces to tackle there. So it's going to take a little bit to get it off the ground. And that's just a technical creation of a program on McLaurin's side with parameters and access rights. So to get it kind of probably up and running, we're probably talking January at the soonest, just to get things together, given that we're almost in December. So we're probably at some point in January for a to technically have the program ready. And then outside of that, there is the marketing that we would want to do, probably partnering with the DRA to get the message out that the program exists, and how folks would go about signing up for that. One other piece that we may want to think about is limiting the total number of spaces that the program could entail. That could be one way to mitigate the potential total cost, as well as allow me the ability to spread those across the different decks. That's one piece that unknown what demand looks like on the east side of town, on the west side of town. If we had an idea of how many spaces we would want to, potentially dedicate to a program like this, that would allow me to spread those spaces or across our system to meet the needs in the different areas, probably with some level of flexibility if we start to cap out at any single parking deck what we originally allocate.
Councilor Milton.
Yeah, I don't know how to articulate this. And I don't pretend to understand all the work that goes on behind the scenes to try to get a program stood up. I'm just worried that because we're wanting to do this as sort of an emergent temporary fix, and with hope that COVID's going to start trending in the right direction and that businesses will be able to have more patrons, I'm just worried that if it takes so long to get off the ground, then the need for it on the back end starts to diminish. And so I don't know how we can get to yes faster and sort of make this as simple as possible and quick as possible. So we can just get it off the ground, have a maximum impact right now when folks are really hurting, and do it for a short window of time, message it in a way that there's no expectation that this is going to last forever, but for it to be something that we can roll out as quickly as possible on a on a temporary basis. So that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, Councilor Milton, I definitely hear you. I think one thing I heard you say is the need on the back end may not be there. I hope that comes true. That's a good thing. But we don't know. So based on what I'm hearing, does anyone, it comes a point where we can keep going back and forth and trying to figure it out, but I think we need to figure out what direction we want to give staff as far as free or reduce, the time frame. I think those are the top two, because I think we've already narrowed it down between it's only for retail and restaurant employees. Councilor Milton.
My suggestion would be no cost for a period of 3 months, sort of a trial period of 3 months.
And then Councilor Stewart.
Thanks. I do want to get to Matt's question about how many spots, if that's helpful. And, at some point, this is arbitrary, just like picking 3 months as opposed to 6 months. And I'm going to fully recognize and own that. But I wonder if starting at 100 spaces, and if that's not enough, you can come back and tell us and we'll reassess then. But it strikes me that it may take us a long time to get to 100 spaces anyway. So 100 spaces across the decks, and as you see fit in terms of divvying those up. I don't know if that's too many, way above what you were thinking, but I'd welcome your feedback, Matt.
That's certainly doable within the capacity that we have among the decks. And again, if we get to a capped level or hit that 100 faster than we would expect, we would just want some mechanism to through you all to be granted authority for something above that level if you so wish.
Okay. So I've heard another piece is they reach 100 spaces. What do we want Matt to come back to our council and request it, or do we want to give authority within the motion to do that? Councilor Milton.
Let's give authority in the motion. That way, anything that comes to us just like takes longer. So let's just like cut us out of that. And so let's refer it out and hopefully get full council concurrence on it. And then, staff can just run with it.
So what's the motion you want to refer out, Councilor Milton or Councilor Stewart?
No call. Well, do you want to, Councilmember Stewart, why don't you take it?
Okay, so I'd make a motion that we report out to full council that staff create a program for retail and, I'm looking at my notes, retail and restaurant employees that is free, that's on a temporary basis for 3 months. That includes 100 spaces in our city-owned parking decks spread across the parking decks, and that staff has the authority to expand the program should you reach that cap without having to come back to full council and ask for that explicit permission. Did I capture it all? Now I'm going to look at Mr. Poole to make sure that
it's been moved and properly second. I'm going to ask Attorney Poole, is that motion compliant?
I think the question would be, does the clerk have it? I think you provided authority so that if that 100 is reached, it allows staff to continue to increase that. The one thing I would ask, and this is possibly a question for Mr. Courier, would be, does he need to know a ceiling? And would there be a reporting requirement to the council just to let them know what the taking down of space between 100 and that ceiling is?
Mr. Poole, I apologize. You broke up a little bit. I believe you asked if there is a ceiling. Is that correct?
Right. Do you need a ceiling?
That would probably help. If it's the most popular program we've ever had, golly, I don't want to come back to you and say that our decks are now full and we can't have anybody else in them. Gosh, I feel like I should leave that up to you because there is some level of financial impact the higher we get. And I feel like Mary Vigu is going to struggle with a budget item if we don't have some level there. So there's probably some thought there.
Mary's used to struggling.
And help Matt here. I think the idea of a cap, certainly some administrative authority would be helpful. Generally, we would have some kind of criteria or some other assistance that would help staff in ascertaining whether or not it was appropriate. So ultimately, to some degree, you're setting up a cap that may not function as a cap if there are no considerations given for the staff in evaluating the appropriateness of raising the cap. So I don't know at this point, to some degree, it might be helpful to speak to some of the triggers that you would want to be considered to raise the cap. If that's simply based on demand, if that's based on some kind of financial performance metrics, or what are those circumstances under which you would want the staff to reconsider the cap?
All right. Councilor Milton, I see, but before you speak out, Matt, how many eligible parking spaces are there? And I know I'm asking you off the top of your head, but I know you live this every day.
Yeah, so it depends on how we define eligible. So, we still have 90% of our monthly customers here, and we have a contractual obligation to provide them parking. At the moment, they're not showing up. But they're still paying. Therefore, we still have an obligation to them. Across our assets at the moment. There's a broad number. There's probably at least 2,000 spaces that could potentially be utilized for a program like this. But again, if those are fully utilized by this program and the parkers that have monthly obligations come back, there will be conflict. So that's probably where a little bit of the rub is.
So how many spaces do we have, period, in our parking decks?
About 8,000.
Okay, 8,000, and you said 90% are spoken for. So that means there's 800 available.
So if I could back up your math.
Yeah, not all spaces are allocated to monthly accounts.
Right,
Some
right.
spaces are reserved for more transitory use. I don't know, Matt, do we have a slide in the presentation? I don't think we had those numbers, the breakdown of the allocation of our parking spaces.
Yeah, we don't have it broken down between what we allocate for monthly and what we allocate for daily parking. Among them, I can tell you kind of off the top of my head, there's about 6,000 or so spaces that we allocate for monthly. I think it's 6,500 off the top of my head. And we probably have obligated around 6,000 or so customers still on the monthly side. And then we would certainly still want some available for daily parkers that are coming in. And they are. We're averaging somewhere between $60,000 and $70,000 a month in daily parking in the parking deck.
Okay. Yeah, I just scrolled back in the presentation when you first presented it for option 2. It was 1,500 spaces available. So for me, I'm thinking a cap of only maybe, I'm thinking 300 for now. We're doing this for 3 months. It may go up. If you get over 300, I say come back to us. That's just me thinking right now. 300 at daily parking rate. I don't even want to do that math of revenue, but that's my thinking. But Councilor Milton, you had your hand up.
My thought was, in trying to make this more simple, I may have made it more complicated and maybe just put it at 100. And if we need more, come back and ask council. So because putting a cap really is just changing. I mean, we're just tossing around arbitrary numbers now. So why don't we just say 100? A friendly amendment to the motion, remove the authority to increase, and just come back if we need more spaces. I think that may make it easier.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, the motion was second is allow retail and restaurant employees to participate in our program for a series of 3 months for free, with a limit of 100 spaces being available through city-owned parking decks. Okay. Go ahead, Matt.
One piece that we did place in our original options was a max per company. I don't know if that's something that you guys would like to contemplate, given that there's only 100 spaces.
You did. It was like
I don't know
5,
if you want Yeah, we did say 5 per business in the original options. I don't know if that's something you would like to move forward, or if you're happy to have no cap per business.
Councilors, your thought?
I would be fine with no cap per business. Part of this is sort of testing the waters and information gathering. And so if in 3 months you come back and say, it was great success, but 2 businesses monopolized the spaces, then we maybe need to say, okay, do we want to continue? If so, how much longer? Do we want to put a business cap, et cetera?
So I'm going to say this. One thing I've learned, it's easier to give than it is to take away. So I'm willing to say, let's cap it. And I'm willing to meet y'all and say at 10. Not all restaurants and retails are created equal in their size and scope. Some may be working where, they may have the people that they hire to do valet parking included, because those people have to work and they're working for the restaurant. That may be something they work out, which will increase that number. So I would say 10, if you all would be okay with that cap, that amendment to the motion of having a cap of 10 parking places per business. Okay. All right. Ralph, are you good with what we have?
Let me give you my understanding to make sure. Focus on restaurant and retail employees with 3 months free with a maximum of 100 spaces total cap. Each company having a maximum of 10 spaces per company.
Correct.
Right? It is for a 3-month period.
Correct.
Got it.
Cool. All right. It's been moved and properly second. I call the question. All those in favor show by raising your hand. All right, those opposed are the same right. The motion carries unanimously. All right, Matt, thank you. You and your team. I don't know if it's a team of 1 or team of 20, but I just want to say thank you because you do team of 25. Just want to thank everyone else, Tansy and Brandon, for your work, and Ralph putting us up. We made it through our year, our first year as a committee. We will not be meeting in December. Even if something is put into this committee at the December 1st meeting, it will carry over until January. So I just wanted to go ahead and make that clear for everyone and the public. And does anyone have anything else they would like to say? Seeing none, since this committee will not meet anymore this year, Happy New Year. I can't wait to see. Well, I'm worried about what 2021 is going to bring because 2020 surprised us, but I just say enjoy each day and please wear your mask, wash your hands, and stay 6 feet away. Everyone, God bless and take care.